everybody. Welcome to Equity.Guru video interview with CEO Dr. Rahul Kushwaha of PredictMedix, ticker symbol PMED. Hey, Dr. Rahul, how are you today?
I'm good. It's a pleasure being on, Chris.
And pleasure to have you on. Look, we've been talking about the PMED story for a little while. Certainly when COVID jumped into the world, it made it for a very interesting prospect of a company that does what your company does, being on the public markets. There's been a little time passed and some milestones completed for you, but also some things that have been missed. What we'll do is, why don't we get to it for people who don't know the PMED story, get you to explain exactly what the company model is.
Oh, absolutely. So with PredictMedix, we are an artificial intelligence company, which is operational in healthcare. We are developing solutions that are targeting workplace health and safety. And we are working on 3 different verticals. So we have a solution which is for identification of alcohol and cannabis impairment in workplaces. We have a solution which is to identify symptoms that associate with infectious diseases, again, bringing that theme of workplace health and safety to the forefront. At the same time, we are developing a solution that can screen for mental disorders with the use of multispectral cameras and sensors and no need for any biologics. And along with that, we also have a next generation virtual care platform that we acquired early in 2020. And that encompasses remote patient monitoring along with functionality of that you see with telehealth platforms. And we are integrating some of the latest wearables into our platform to target the long-term care market and the clinical trials market, along with the HR departments for workplace health and safety.
Got it. So things started out pretty well, certainly on brand for COVID potential detection. What have you done over the past 6 months that you think is really worth highlighting, and what would you say have been the things that you've missed?
So one of the things that I would say is that, okay, in terms of our solution to screen for symptoms, we had an opportunity to go in 2 different directions. One was, can we become really cannibalistic about COVID-19, go out, get a lot of sales, but then when mass vaccination kicks in, when there is that herd immunity, the solution is not needed anymore.
Got it.
The second approach that we took, it was more about, can we build a sustainable long-term solution that targets workplace health and safety, which is going to be relevant even after mass vaccination is rolled out and even after that herd immunity is achieved. And that is the path we have been on. So for the past few months, again, if you look at the trajectory of our tech development and tech deployment, our focus has not been on being cannibalistic about COVID-19. It has been about developing a long-term solution, which in itself turns into a steady revenue stream moving forth, even after COVID-19 is gone.
So that's the plan. How's that rolled out?
So that is rolled out. I mean, we have had quite a few successful deployments here in Canada, in Asia with Fortune 500 companies. But the key to remember is that when we are having these deployments, it's not just in the perspective of the current COVID-19 landscape, it's more in the perspective of long run, that once our technology goes in, it's about understanding that this technology is here to stay for a long, long time, because it's making workplace, it's prioritizing workplace health and safety, and it's turning it into a safe environment, which is irrespective of if COVID-19 is here now or it's not there tomorrow. So
that kind of puts you in a bit of a tricky spot, because a lot of the early lift was COVID related on your stock. Now that COVID is moving to a place slowly where we'll get vaccinations, that luster sort of falls off the rose a little bit. Now you're back to, we are an AI company that detects a multitude of potential problems.
Yeah.
But that might not be what the market is rewarding with interest right now. So what do you have in your back pocket that you can come out with that will like sort of accelerate things again and get you to a place where it's not just a good thing to have this screening set up, but an important thing?
So that's where we are working on some extremely important and very, very large strategic partnerships. which are panning out as we speak. And these are, again, long-term partnerships, which is going to lead us into a path of business development, which extends beyond COVID-19. Because one of the things that we have been able to do is, I mean, as much as you were talking about being an AI company, developing all these softwares, these algorithms, we've also developed a proprietary hardware infrastructure. So now, and this hardware infrastructure looks a lot similar to what you would see as metal detectors in airports. So now what you're talking about are these plug and play solutions. You bring the solution in, and the solution can, let's say, screen for impairment. The solution can screen for symptoms. So it's about building that overall acceptance to this new form of technology, which is about you bring in these doorways and you turn workplaces into safe environments. And that is the bigger picture that we are working on.
Okay.
So it's not so much about that, okay, yeah, get a few multispectral cameras, install them, we'll roll our AI, and now when the COVID is gone, well, that's it. It's
nothing to do, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the thick of some of the talk online about PredictMedix. What we like to do is we like to go through the message boards and find out, you know, people who are disappointed with something, what are they disappointed about? People who think that you might have missed the mark, people who want more information, which is often a thing that companies only discuss important things through news releases, and a lot of the lesser important things get sort of slipped through the cracks. We got one question here. Back in the beginning of February 2020, there was an interview you did on how the tech was going to be used with purposes of detecting people who are impaired both with alcohol and marijuana. This was going to be done using a handheld device. In May, JuiceWorks came along, and all of a sudden the new focus was on walking through a booth. We know the delays of manufacturing the booths. The question is, why have we not heard anything on since March on the handheld devices?
Well, part of the reason is that with these booths that we have developed, it was about targeting the workplace sector, where again, it's not about that you have this handheld device to identify impairment, but at the same time, one of the components which is being used in this booth can actually be in a handheld form. So just because we are saying that the technology is going to be rolled out in the form of these booths, well, that is only for the workplace sector. That is not for the law enforcement sector. There, it's all about using those handheld devices.
Okay. So yeah, that'd be one of those things that is a small, important detail for some that probably isn't important enough to stick into every news release. India's Institute of Technology study on the impairment tech. What's the status and estimated release of peer-reviewed findings?
So again, with COVID-19 rampaging India, as we all saw, that did throw a massive curveball at us.
Yeah.
Because as we were working on our study, gathering a lot of data, well, you got to remember that from a validation perspective, especially for alcohol, we also collect a lot of data using breathalyzers. And now when you're in the midst of a COVID-19 pandemic and you tell the people who are on the ground that, oh, by the way, also use breathalyzers and people that are participating, that is a big no.
Yeah.
Okay. So although it did throw, it did throw quite a big curveball at us, but nevertheless, now with the overall environment in India, things are moving at a much rapid pace. And within the next couple of months, we do anticipate the study to be wrapped up, to be published in peer-reviewed journals. But at the same time, the other point that I would add there is that we have moved ahead with commercialization of our impairment solution. And as we speak, as I'm talking to you right now, we are speaking to several potential partners here in Canada to pilot our impairment technology, which should clearly indicate that as far as the impairment technology goes, things have definitely moved far ahead compared to where they were sitting in February of 2020.
So that brings us to the next question. What's happening with all of the partners now? Are the deployments actually being deployed in Canada? Is there a place where one can see things actually in play?
Oh, absolutely. Deployments are happening with several of our partners. Of course, in Canada, there are places where people can go in and see the deployment. But again, the key to remember is a lot of these deployments are in workplace settings.
Right.
So the last thing they want is, just random guests coming in. Oh, we're here to see if, where's that PMED solution that PMED has been talking about? Can we just take a look at that?
Right.
So, but again, to add to that, we are putting together a video which will have a lot more information around how our technology functions, what happens as you walk through, and that's probably going to be released in time next week.
Will that be showing the booth in in progress in
Uh,
an actual deployment?
if I'm not mistaken, yes.
Well, that'd be great.
Yeah.
That's actually our next question.
Oh, okay.
I think, for a company that was part of the COVID sector, such as it was, I think a lot of companies that sort of found themselves in the middle of that group of suddenly skyrocketing share prices. There's a certain element of everyone was promoting and not so much actually executing, and
Mm,
that there may be a product there, but that by the time the products actually become real, that maybe things have moved on. It seems like yours is in a different situation, but maybe hasn't had the credit for it.
mm.
How do you get that message out there, do you think, in a way that sort of waves your hands and shines a shiny light on the wall and says, hey, listen, everybody, like, this wasn't just a COVID play. That this is something that's much more wide ranging. It'll be here for COVID 2 and COVID 3, or I guess COVID 2021.
Mm.
But influenza, or anything else that comes along that pops up and uh, runs havoc on the world.
Well, absolutely, and I think that's where one of the things that people have to look at is the underlying team when it comes to PredictMedix. I mean, our advisory board is led by Kapil Raval, and he's the director for AI at Microsoft. So clearly, with him being at the helms of chairing the advisory board, there was that understanding from day one that yes, that although with COVID-19, we are going to see a massive uptake of technology, but we have to make sure that we just do not become one of those companies which is perhaps being cannibalistic about COVID-19. That all of a sudden we drop everything and we just focus on COVID-19, we get something out there and we try to sell a lot of it. So that was never the game plan with PredictMedix, because for us, it's more about building that long-term sustainable business, which builds value for every single person who is involved in it. Because again, if we just look at through the list of the partners that we have, a lot of them are really Fortune 500 entities, which have a lot of respect on a global level. So, for instance, I mean, we have had deployments with Indian Oil. I mean, it's like a Fortune 150 company. They wouldn't just deploy another COVID-19 solution on multispectral cameras like everyone else is doing. What they were looking for is something very unique to address that unmet need of workplace health and safety, and that's where our solution went in, and that's where it's being deployed.
Now, is that solution currently throwing up positives and negatives? Is it helping? Do we have any sort of even just a ballpark sort of numbers on how that's been going?
Yeah. So I guess one of the stats I can share with you, it pertains to one of the deployments here in Canada in an industrial setting. So ever since the unit has been deployed, what they have been able to see is that there haven't been as many absentees as they were seeing before deployment of the technology. They have not seen shutdowns as far as the specific plans go, and clearly, I mean, the unit is identifying if someone is exhibiting symptoms or they are not. And I mean, of course, the percentage of people that are exhibiting symptoms is actually a small percent.
Hmm.
I mean, or else those. I mean, if it was the other way around, then
That'd be trouble.
yeah.
Yeah. But it has been sort of spotting people that are showing symptoms.
That's right.
So I think that that's really important, and I think that the ability to take that structure into other scenarios, other diseases, or other afflictions, or I know that there's a big business going with companies that are competing each other to detect metals or bombs or chemicals
Mm.
going through public spaces. Exactly how far can you go, given the time and resources, to expand this thing outward away from COVID-19?
So one of the things that we are doing is we are actually also integrating our solutions with metal detectors, because that is something for which, as we have been talking to potential clients in the U.S., they have been asking for that, because a lot of these clients already have metal detectors in their facilities. They're like, oh, can we merge the two solutions together? So that is something we are actively working on as we speak.
Okay. In April 2020, the company announced it was working on an impairment study for cannabis and alcohol with Hindalco with 3,000 participants. Um, all references to Hindalco have been removed from the corporate investor deck. Are they still a partner?
Well, again, so first and foremost, I mean, this 3,000 people study was not just with Hindalco. This comes back to the question that you asked me earlier. So
Right.
IIT is playing a role in it, and there are other places, other sites that are involved in it. When it comes to Hindalco, we had to sign NDA with them, considering the site was a major power plant, which is of a security concern. And that's part of the reason that we cannot communicate anything when it comes to Hindalco before we get permission from them.
Got it.
And that's part of the reason I won't be able to say anything when it comes to Hindalco right now.
Makes perfect sense. The company's announced numerous reseller agreements that have been in effect for multiple months. Taurus, JuiceWorks, CDMA, Tech Mahindra. Based on the latest quarterly financial statements, companies not generated revenue. Does this mean that the resellers are not selling? Or is it just a long tail for these deals to actually get into the financials?
Well, I mean, again, so with JuiceWorks, they have been firing all their engines. When it comes to our resellers in the UK, we have had the first site operational a few weeks ago. And at the same time, when it comes to Tech Mahindra, so before, I mean, the issue that we encountered pertained more for fabrication. I mean, with Tech Mahindra, their interest is in becoming a reseller, but they do not want to do the fabrication. And that's where we had to go back to the drawing board, identify the right set of partners. And that's where we partnered with Paris Defense in India. They're one of the largest defense contractors in India. And they're the ones who are taking care of all our manufacturing when it comes to Asia. And the other side to that is with Paris, they're an approved government contractor, I mean, really at every government level in India. And their interest lies not just in manufacturing for us, but also selling our technology into the government sector in India.
Okay, so it's going to take some time, as happens with any startup or any company that's breaching into a new area of business. In early June, JuiceWorks said they were installing 4 units in the GTA and work was starting on the next 4. Were these completed?
Yeah, I mean, so installations were done and they have been all successful deployments.
Great. In August, the company announced a deployment at a major Montreal pharmacy. Is that one pharmacy obviously won't make or break the company, but it will help to show the technology can work. Are you upping that deal to other pharmacies?
Well, again, so as far as that pharmacy goes, so as we were working the specifics out with the pharmacy, there was a bigger opportunity with that group that came into play. And so, as you can imagine, rather than focusing on one pharmacy, now we're trying to go after that bigger opportunity.
Got it. So the questioner here says going into the pharmacy can show that it's not yet deployed. So that larger opportunity, is that obviously taken over?
Well, that is something we are working on as we speak.
Okay. We're working through these quickly. In November, PMED announced a partnership with McGill for clinical research on their 3 verticals: infectious disease, cannabis and alcohol, and mental health screening. Can you further elaborate on the goals of that and expected outcomes and anticipated timelines?
Yeah, so one of the things that we are quite interested is actually going on to disrupt the healthcare market. And with a lot of AI algorithms that we are developing and we have developed, I mean, clearly it's being trained on patient data, but the eventual goal is, or the eventual question that we want to address is, using our no-touch technology where there is no biological agents that are involved, can we turn this into a diagnostic tool for certain diseases, for perhaps a whole subset of infectious diseases? And that's where this partnership with McGill comes into play. So it's more about taking our technology in terms of where it stands for workplace health and safety, as I've talked about, and perhaps taking it to even a bigger level, whereby we can say that we have been a true disruptor in the healthcare market, where we are talking about AI working in a no-touch fashion, identifying all these subtle signs to diagnose disease.
That's obviously a much bigger picture. You know, such a machine, I think, would probably find its way at the doorway of the ER in your local hospital before you even talk to a person. What timeline-wise, what's the realistic likelihood that such a device is in play in the next year?
So there are 2 sides to it. I mean, one is, of course, our technology as it stands now, it's more like a triage system, right? It's like you go to a hospital, your parameters are checked. Well, our technology as it stands now, that is what it's doing in a workplace setting. So we are in the process of kickstarting a study with McGill, and that is about taking the technology to really the next diagnostic level. And we actually anticipate that to kickstart within the next few weeks.
At what point, or at any point, does Health Canada come into this and have to approve what you're doing?
At the moment, we try to become a diagnostic tool.
So really, not any point.
Yeah. I mean, so if you're talking about workplace health and safety, not at that stage.
Right.
But the moment we feel that with our algorithms, they've gotten to a point where they can diagnose, then Health Canada comes into play.
Got it. And I guess at that point, the game really does change.
Big time.
Is that the ultimate goal? If you're looking 5-10 years down the line for PredictMedix to be able to perform some of the tasks of a family doctor, for example?
I mean, again, so if you talk about the mental health technology that we are working on, that is more of a diagnostic tool, because essentially what we are saying is that we are going to take all the knowledge that a lot of these top clinicians have in their brain, and we're going to train our AI on it, such that it can identify signs of things such as depression and dementia. Because right now, as it stands, the diagnosis of mental health is quite subjective. Mm-hmm. And our goal is to completely eliminate the subjectivity and really have an AI algorithm where it's like you sit in front of the AI algorithm, you talk to it, the algorithm is watching you through a multitude of sensors and cameras, and then the algorithm is making a decision as far as diagnosis of mental health goes. So in a way, we have already marched in that direction. Mm-hmm. In the short run, our plan is really to become more of a market leader in workplace health and safety sector. Part of the reason is when you look at that sector, I mean, there hasn't been a great implementation of technology. Now with COVID-19, things have finally changed where it's like everyone is realizing, well, we need to bring in technology if we want to make workplaces safer. So mm-hmm. for us, step one is to become that leader in workplace health and safety, and step two is really about being that true disruptor in the healthcare sector by launching our tools, let's say to diagnose mental health disorders, and also for taking our technologies further such that they can be used for diagnostic purposes as well.
So I guess if you're getting to a place where you're looking at mental health, the booth becomes less important, right? The actual hardware sort of steps aside, and a Zoom call can do the job. Once you get to that place, it's a very short sideways step to start looking into HR issues. Is the employee happy in the workplace? Is mm-hmm. he happy? Is she happy with the job? Is that part of the next step beyond that?
So that is in a way part of what we are working on. I mean, especially with mobile wellbeing, which is the remote patient monitoring platform that we acquired. So one of the areas that we are taking our platform to is really more towards that HR, and it's about addressing a lot of these issues that are faced in the HR departments.
And I guess that really brings itself into away from large companies that have a big corporate HQ with big doorways that can host a booth, and more into a company like mine where I've got 12 to 15 people that may or may not be having a good time if I'm not watching. Definitely a big market. One might say much bigger than what infectious diseases brings.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely.
Okay. On the June 10, 2020 press release for mobile wellbeing, it was mentioned platform is already working with the healthcare system in both Canada and the United States. If it's already being rolled out, should there be revenue included in PMED's next financials?
Well, that is all for validation of the platform. And all of that work, which is conducted with hospitals all over US and Canada, I mean, that has gone well, and the platform hasn't validated.
Okay. So you bought something there that's not like an idea with some software attached, but a fully functioning piece of work. Look, when you get up in the morning and you think about what you have at PMED, what is the one thing that really excites you most that maybe the market may or may not even be looking at?
I think, so for me, the biggest excitement is that as much as everyone has been talking about AI for a long, long time, I mean, I can proudly say that perhaps we are the first ones that are really bringing that AI to the forefront to offer solutions which impact all of us. And that is something which, according to me, and again, this is my personal opinion, is perhaps the biggest USP of PredictMedix, and that is something that excites me all the time.
Do you think that the AI sector is a lot like the COVID sector in that it's filled with companies that utilize the words to try and get a bit of buzz, but don't actually have, like, I can't tell you how many companies I've seen that are, you know, they have a Shopify account and claim that now they're AI enabled, you know, like it's the definition of AI gets very, very wide the further down the stock market you go. If you could get a little bit into the weeds on the artificial intelligence aspect of what you do, like how is it actually functioning as an artificial intelligence, as maybe a learning tool to become better over time?
So I think that's where the distinguishing factor comes into play between machine learning, which used to be the old AI, and now deep learning. So when you're talking about deep learning, you're talking about neuronal networks. So it's about, you have an outcome and you have an input. And it's about the algorithm making a decision of how to go from point A to point B. With machine learning, that used to be more of statistical probability. And even now, a lot of people, when they say AI, all they're all they're doing is really traditional machine learning. And for us, we have moved beyond that. And that's where, I mean, we can proudly say that we are really an AI entity at the end of the day. And the other part of the puzzle is all the healthcare data, which is needed to properly train these algorithms. And that is where our partners that we have all over the world really come into play, because you need access to the healthcare data if you want to develop anything with AI. And that is something we have been able to do.
It's one of those big black boxes that I think a lot of investors sort of look at and think, I'm going to trust that you know what you're talking about because I don't know what you're talking about. You know, how much of your time is spent trying to, layman's terms, the work that's being done, so that it's not just like really smart, pointy-headed guys talking to each other over in the corner?
Well, I mean, you know what I mean? That's a very interesting point to bring up, because as much as I tend to assume that, oh, people are going to understand what AI is, the reality is they don't. It's about, oh, AI. I mean, yeah, like everybody's using AI these days. Yeah, sure.
I mean, I think
that's
a Windows-enabled computer is AI. Let's be honest, right?
Exactly. That's right. And that's why my take is like, well, just Google things. Just Google artificial intelligence. Just look at the definition, and believe me, once you do that, you'll have a better understanding of AI.
If only Googling things were so easy for people in this area. We'd all have PhDs. I'm going to ask you a little side question here. Something that was a point in the US media recently, politically, was the discussion about whether someone deserves to call themselves a doctor if they're not a medical doctor. What's your take on that, Dr. Rahul?
So my take is, okay, again, definition of MD. I mean, MD is really an undergraduate medical degree. When you have done a doctorate, that means that you have developed some new information, or you have invented something. So you have gone above and beyond to discover something new, and you have contributed to the global intellectual base or the global knowledge base. So personally, if you were to ask me, you're taking this in the wrong direction. Let me tell you that.
I agree with you 100%. I think the Latin that doctor comes from means teacher.
Yep.
So yeah, for me that's what it comes down to. But sidetrack. Look, obviously, when you're in the medical and artificial intelligence world, news comes out when it comes out. You can't just go out there and say, well, we haven't said anything for a couple of weeks, so let's make something happen. You're waiting on clinical studies, you're waiting on deployments, you're waiting on resellers to resell, you're waiting on manufacturers to manufacture, you're watching the evolution of COVID as it goes. You know, how do you get people reinterested in your story when there's those pauses, there's necessary pauses in communication? How can you do more than what you've done?
Okay, so I think And I think that's where one of the things that we always wanted to do was not to completely align ourselves with this COVID-19 landscape. Uh, even though we did not completely go to say that we are a COVID play, I think by default, just considering what happened in the market, people just associated us with COVID-19. Because let me tell you this, I mean, a lot of people I speak with, they don't even know. They're like, oh, you have an impairment solution? They just think that we are another COVID-19 play. So right. I think the key is perhaps having more of that communication with shareholder groups or people who are subject matter domains for subject matter experts, for instance, that can really convey that point out there that, let's say, when you look at a company like PredictMedix, it's not just about COVID-19. What these guys are, or what we are actually trying to do is to develop a central infrastructure and technologies which it's all about workplace health and safety. It's not contingent upon a global event.
Right.
It's something which is going to be needed not only now, but as we move ahead in the future. So it's not about looking at PMED as that short-term play. It's about, oh, where is this going to be 3 months down the road? It's about looking at PMED and seeing that what we have accomplished for the past 12 months and where this can be in the next, 12 to 24 months.
Okay. So currently your market cap is at 35 million. I think people look at the share price going up and down and think it's a win or a loss, but I always like to look at the actual value of the company. And to me, for what you're into, 35 million is a pretty reasonable price for a company that, if it pulls off what you seem to be pulling off, would ultimately be a very important and probably acquirable tech for a larger company. Do you look at the share price every day and think winning, losing, or are you looking at that longer term vision and thinking, the share price is obviously important, but it's not the indicator of whether you're winning or losing?
It's obviously important, but again, the thing is, the insiders, haven't really sold a single share. I haven't sold a single share. The CEO hasn't sold a single share. It's about, we all know where this is going. We all believe in the long-term value that PredictMedix is going to generate. So, but at the same time, as much as I don't want to look at the share price, on any given day, there is going to be an investor calling or messaging me.
Right.
Look at the share price. Look at the bid and ask.
Right. I guess, it's tough to have that metric that's constantly sort of whirring away in the background. It's like when you go to A&W and they have that little screen up the back saying how many people think it's clean or dirty. You constantly have, in private world, you have your investors looking over your shoulder, but there's maybe only 3 or 4 of them. In the public world, you're getting phone calls and while you're trying to do your job. Do you make yourself available to those calls? Like, do you invite people who are genuinely interested and have questions that they haven't been able to find the answer to get in touch with you or your IR guy and have those conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, as you can imagine, there are people who are looking for insider information.
Right.
And once I get a sense that the person I'm talking to is really looking for insider information, well, guess what? Then there isn't any form of communication from my end to them.
Got it. I guess it's a fine line, but it's one that, as a public market CEO, you're constantly going to get, like, you got to be careful if you're having a drink in a bar, like the guy next to you is not like, tell me more about your results.
Exactly.
If there's one thing that you really want investors to understand, like really understand about what it is that you're doing and what it is you're working towards, like, what is the one thing that you think you just wish would be bright neon every time someone looked at one of your news releases?
I think, again, it just, I'll come back to the same point, that we are developing a multitude of technologies which are addressing an unmet need, which has been there for a long, long time. And all of these are focused on workplace health and safety, whether it's people falling sick, whether it's impairment, whether it's mental health. All of these are serious issues that are faced on a daily basis in any workplace. And that market in itself, it's one of the biggest markets out there. And for us, with our aim being to completely become the market leaders in that segment, that's where it's more about, where is PMED going to be 12 to 24 months down the road? So it's not about where PMED is going to be 2 days from now or 2 weeks from now. It's about where we are going to be then. And I think, considering what we have been able to accomplish over the past few months or the past 12 months. If anything, I think it should show people a sign of things to come.
I think a lot of folks steer clear of sectors like biotech because quite often what's being developed has a long timeline and people get distracted by things that are going up today. But the people who do invest in biotech companies, specifically in companies that are going through FDA trials, things like that, they understand that that long, slow decline as shareholders fall off is actually a buying opportunity if you're confident in what's to come. Although you're not going through any FDA trials, you're definitely going through peer-reviewed studies. You're going through efforts to demonstrate your technology works. And so I think you're kind of in that same category where one morning we wake up and find that PMED has put out a news release that says the Indian Department of Defense has bought the tech, or that some larger companies come along and said, this is actually an interesting package to throw in on top of our other existing, like, you know, you're exposed to artificial intelligence, you're exposed to biotech, you're exposed to medical,
Yeah.
you've got exposure to cannabis, you know, you've got exposure to alcohol. There's a lot of sort of subsectors that are attached to what you do. But the AI sector proper has had quite a bit of interest. And I think maybe there's an issue that because you're involved in so many different parallels, that people don't give you the benefit of any one of those actual parallels. Do you know what I mean?
That's right.
You're not an AI company, you're a medical company. You're not a medical company, you're a detection company. Like it's you're in that sort of gray zone where if somebody's going to invest, they have to look at that $35 million market cap, see that in the artificial intelligence space, that's a pretty small market cap when you have things that are actually being deployed out there in the world. And that you know, time is of the essence. You've just got to be a little bit patient and let the things roll out that they roll out. You're certainly not a company that's full of market guys that are you know, just looking for the 3 months in and 4 months out. This is obviously a much longer term play. That said, how long do you think the true believers will have to sit before news comes out that you think is genuinely game changing, that will have a real upside effect on the share price?
So one of the things I would say is, so we had this investor call towards the, towards I think sometime in December or November of last year. And I don't know if people remember, one of the things I did say is that, Q1 of 2021, there are some major developments which are happening. And from the business development standpoint, we really have all the engines that are just going to be firing up. And that is precisely what's happening right now as we speak. So in terms of where we are sitting today with PMED, we are actually quite happy in terms of where we are, what's happening behind the scenes. And it's not really going to be a long wait for investors to find out that what has actually gone on behind this.
Sorry, I was muted. I think it's a good point to finish. You know, I want to thank you for your time and openness. You know, the reason we do these videos is because quite often what's going on at the pointy end of a company is a lot more than what you can actually talk about. And so investors sort of feel that the absence is a lack of communication. But what I'm getting from you is that you're there to communicate. It's just, there's a lot going on and there's only so much you can actually talk about, which to me is a positive sign. Appreciate your time, and we'll check back in a little bit.
Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure.